Okay, everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to go through what types of questions you're going to see on your standardized reading assessment. So your first 5 questions, you're going to be asked about fact and opinion. Now, remember, an opinion can be a widely held opinion and still be an opinion. So, for example, if we look here at questions 4 and 5, technology has revolutionized communication, and fast food is unhealthy. Those are both opinions. They're widely held opinions, but nonetheless, they're still opinions. Okay. For questions 6 to 8, you're going to be asked about cause and effect relationships. Look for keywords in the questions. What is a possible effect? What is a possible cause? What is a possible effect? Okay, so for each one, of course, your answer is going to be different depending on whether or not you're looking for a cause or you're looking for an effect. For questions 9, 10, and 11, you're going to be asked to complete the sentence with the correct phrasal verb. So you're going to be given a sentence, okay, and you're going to have to choose what preposition completes the sentence to form the appropriate phrasal verb. So, for example, number 9, the bus broke blank on the way to the city. In, out, down, or over. And we know broke down means that there was some mechanical problem with the bus. For questions 12 to 17, you're going to be given a passage. Now, remember, this is not, of course, the exact same material that you're going to see on your test, but this is the same content that's going to be covered. It's not the same questions. So you're going to have to read a passage, and then you're going to be asked to define or identify certain things within the passage, like non-defining relative clauses or defining relative clauses. So, for example, here, a study to explore the impact of online learning on students. That's an example of a defining relative clause. It helps us to understand what type of study the author is talking about. You're going to be asked about cohesive devices. These effects is a cohesive device. And of course, these effects refers to effects that are previously mentioned in the paragraph. What are they, right? What is the author talking about when he says these effects? Here, the author says might result in a lack of social interaction. We see might result in. We remember we learned all about this when we talked about language for hedging. The author is softening his or her argument. And then think about the author's stance. Is the author passionate, cautious, critical, or indifferent? In this particular sentence or this particular passage, the author's fairly cautious, right? And we know that because the author's using language for hedging. Here, you've got another passage, okay, and you're going to be asked to identify other rhetorical features. Okay, you might be looking at language for cause and effect, comparative language, conditional sentences, or language for evaluation. Integrating renewable energy sources into national grids can lead to a more sustainable future. So we know right away that we've got language for cause and effect. We see that phrase can lead to. Okay, so look for the key phrases that we talked about related to each of these language functions. You guys are very familiar with comparative language. You guys are very familiar with language for evaluation. We see an example right here. The overall benefits for the environment and energy security are significant. The author is evaluating those things. So we've got, yeah, several examples in here. For example is used, as we know, to give an example. Okay. Here we are going to practice our adjective noun collocations, and that's questions 23 to 27. You guys are very, very familiar with all of that, so I won't go into too much detail on that. Antonyms, you guys remember our antonyms, which are words that mean the opposite of something. Complex, the opposite of complex is simple. And here these should be underlined. Okay. Vague, the opposite of vague is precise. Okay, the results were inconclusive. Okay, and the opposite of inconclusive is decisive. The process is tedious. Okay, if something is the opposite of tedious, it's interesting to do. He was very cautious. The opposite of cautious is reckless. Okay, for questions 33 to 35, you're going to need to choose language for comparison and contrast to complete the sentence. So here it says the new software has a learning curve. Blank, it offers great features once mastered. So we're talking about opposite relationships. Okay, so when I'm talking about opposites, I need to choose on the other hand. Now, a good test taking skill here, I see similarly and just as. Those two those two phrases or expressions are talking about similarities. And I know I can have two phrases that are correct for one answer, right? So if I see two things that are similar, then I know that it must be wrong, right? That can't be the answer choice. I know, on the other hand, a phrase that signifies contrast is probably correct. Therefore, therefore is talking about cause and effect. So that's got nothing to do with it. So my answer is C. For number 34, the first candidate has a great attitude, blank. The second candidate is very enthusiastic. So these are similarities. Okay, and here, similarly. Again, if I look at B and C, in contrast and on the other hand, they're both talking about differences. So that can't be correct. And choice D, for instance, is talking about giving an example. Number 35, this method is efficient, blank. The alternative method is highly efficient. Uh, on the contrary, right? So we're talking about opposites there. For questions 36 to 40, you're going to talk about your knowledge of word families. Now, you need to look for a word. So, for example, here, naturally, that's not a word. So you can eliminate that choice right away. Look for keywords in the question. So it's asking us what adjective. So I know I'm looking for an adjective. For example, so naturally, that's an adverb. I can eliminate that right away. Um, Naturalist, that's a noun. So I can eliminate that right away. What adjective is associated with the noun nature? Natural, right? So I have to look for keywords in the question, and we're going to do that for 5 questions there. Okay, so for questions 41 to 45, we want to determine the strategy the author is using to hook the reader. Okay, so remember, the author might give us statistics. Okay, more than 480,000 people die from smoking-related illnesses each year in the US, right? That's a statistic. They might start with a strong statement. Smoking is the leading cause of preventable death. Are they going to use a quotation or a startling fact? Okay, so remember, after the author uses a quotation, they have to be sure to interpret the quotation for the reader. Okay, so for question 46 and 47, we need to use our knowledge of the first, second, third, and zero conditionals to answer these questions. So 46 asks for an example of the second conditional. Remember, we use the second conditional to talk about things that are unlikely to happen. So uh, let's look at these four examples. If I won the lottery, I will buy a car. If I won the lottery, I would buy a car. If I had won the lottery, I would have bought a car. If I win, I always buy a car. So I need to use the past simple tense in my if clause and would and the bare infinitive in my result clause. So it's if I won the lottery, I would buy a car. And number 47, we're going to talk about the third conditional. So we talk about the third conditional when we're talking about things we would have done in the past. That's one example, things I would have done in the past if I had had the opportunity. So if I had known, I would have told you, right? If I know, I will tell you. If I knew, I would tell you. If I know, I tell you. No, it's if I had known, I would have told you. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at our last part here. We've got a short paragraph where we are going to, and this is an introductory paragraph for a comparative essay. We're going to have to identify the topics for comparison, the significance of comparison, and the points of comparison. So here we've got, oh, and take this out here. Okay, we've got understanding these distinctions is key to fully appreciating what each country has to offer. Okay, that's why we need to understand the comparison. That's the significance. France and Italy, these are the topics for comparison. And the arts and gourmet food, okay, here, this is the author's thesis statement. That's why I took out thesis over here. They are also the points of comparison, right? He's talking about what is being compared. Okay, so that should help to prepare you for everything that you guys will see on this Saturday's test.